Hi, everybody. So yeah, I'm Ryan Murray. I'm with Electronic Media and Film. Um, I am, I guess I'm a experimental filmmaker, and also in the last 3 years or so have gotten fairly deeply involved in virtual reality media production, which has been fun for my own scholarship as an artist, and it's been fun for teaching for my filmmaking and media students. But I was thinking about a lot of these VR media production tools are less intimidating than you might think, right? In fact, there's a lot of very approachable sized devices that are basically like iPhone sized things that you can shoot 360-degree VR video with, and pair them with your phone through apps so that you can do any kind of trimming or cutting just right there in your phone. And I have to say, I think scholars could be leveraging this more than we are as a way to document things outside, like not just to make films or something like that, but to document work that is, for any number of reasons, exclusive or hard to access, or just visually exciting, or involves travel or something. So we can share what we do with our colleagues, with conferences, with the world at large, with our students. So that's the idea here. I'm going to share my screen so I can give you my little 30-second video pitch for this, and then I'll show you some general tips on how to do this, and I'll also walk you through using one of these cameras from start to finish, and try to make it as approachable as I can. Scholarship take you to the edge of Earth's atmosphere. I want to make sure I've got the right screen shared. This is the right screen to share. Atmosphere. Let me pull that. Start one more time. Does your scholarship take you to the edge of Earth's atmosphere, or face to face with danger? Do you have access to a sweet science lab, or a world-class collection? Wherever your scholarship takes you, take us there too by documenting it in virtual reality. Okay, so that's my angle. I actually have pulled all of those clips from, I will, I'd be lying if I said they're all like professors' research, but they are, educational, travel-oriented documentary content that I think could be inspiration for different ways of thinking about what kinds of stuff could be useful to document this way. And I'm putting the links to each of those videos in the chat right now. So you can watch those sort of at your leisure if you're interested in what any of those little parts of that trailer were. They're right there on YouTube, and you can see, anything from folks literally attaching a 360 camera to a weather balloon and sending it up to the edge of the atmosphere, to putting them, in the field with wild animals, or inside labs. And that last one, the fossil museum, has a pretty amazing beginning section that uses a lot of archival footage and stuff that museums would have available that was not obviously shot in VR. It was shot, nearly 100 years ago, but it was built into a VR demonstration. And if I can, I don't know, if I can advertise the next workshop already, I'll be showing you how to do that kind of post-production editing stuff next time. But for right now, I want to just talk about cameras, okay? So why would we do this? The point here is, let's say you have access to some cool research visual experience. It might involve travel. It might just involve access to interesting equipment or people or places, laboratories, what have you. Especially in the world we're currently living in, none of us can go there and experience that with you, right? But if you can deliver that kind of sense of presence and immersion to your audience, whether it's, you know, lay people, so to speak, or other colleagues here at other universities, or your students, I think that you can potentially raise the you know, profile of your scholarship, right? So one thing that's cool about virtual reality video, of course, is the experience is a little closer to reality, right? I mean, you're able to kind of drop people into the full 360 experience of a place. And that helps them see the full context for something. I mean, I think in the beginning of filmmaking history, we talk a little bit about, you know, in my field, we talk about the history of documentary and some of the maybe naive hopes that the documentary camera could be objective, you know, could be a sort of fly on the wall. Now, in the fullness of time, I think it's become apparent that people always sort of perform for a camera, and a camera always frames the world and decides what we show and don't show. Now, VR video is not going to stop that. It's not going to create true objectivity. People will always be aware that a camera is there, but we do remove that problem of the frame, right? We take away the frame and make a full surround experience, which could potentially be, I think, really useful for people who are doing some kind of, like, you know, ethnography or studies that involve participation in, you know, in a cultural experience or something like that. You know, documentation of a scene without cropping anything could allow people to have a greater sense of more objectivity in their presence, you know. The other thing that's great about it is it kind of levels the playing field a little bit in terms of access and money and equity. You know, people can travel without traveling, which is not only good for the pocketbook, it's good for the environment, you know, the carbon footprint, and it's also good for health in the pandemic, right? So if you have access to some place that you can't take your colleagues or students, it would be great to document in this way. The last reason, if I'm still selling you on this idea, the last reason I think you might be interested in trying this is simply engaging with emerging technology is a way to raise the notoriety of scholarship. I mean, having notable scholarship on its own merits is wonderful, of course, but if we can talk about this just in a I don't know, pragmatic or even careerist way, I think being able to package your scholarship in a way that makes it look cutting edge and relevant and of the moment can't do anyone any harm, right? So I want to start with a couple of general tips to shooting 360 video before I get into the practicalities of how I would use one of these cameras. In general, on any 360 camera, what you're doing is using a combination of lenses. On these ones I'm going to show you, it's just a camera with two lenses, one on either side. And you're documenting the entire space you're in, full 360 degrees, not just panorama around, all around me, but above, below, everything. So we're going to sort of drop our viewers into inside a sphere, so to speak. Why this matters is when you go to document something, you have to think, we're going to see everything. Okay, there's no such thing as behind the camera. So if you're setting up a shoot in your lab or in a place that you have access to, whatever, any people that are in that space, they're in the shot. Any lights you have to try to make the you know, image look better or more visible, those lights are in the shot. If you're trying to record sound or something and you need a mic, it's in the shot. Everything's in the shot. Okay. So that means we have to think about what a location does for a viewer's eye. You know, we want viewers to look all the way around a space. Like, why document it in 360 if it's not interesting in every direction, right? So you would want to shoot somewhere that is interesting in every direction and that could actually hopefully guide the viewer to, like, want to turn around and see what's behind them or above them or below them. there is one instinct that I think people have that comes from being used to rectangle-based cameras, is to try to back a camera up into a corner or against a wall, like to get the widest shot possible. That is not a good instinct for 360, because that means half of your image is the wall or the corner, right? So the biggest tip I can give you in terms of framing is you got to stick this thing in the middle of the action. So your 360 camera needs to be centralized in the place that you're trying to document. It should not be put in a corner. That does limit things. You know, if there's a lot of action going on, you wouldn't want to knock the thing over or whatever, but that's part of what we're trying to do here, is think about how can we be in the midst of whatever we're documenting. The one other set of tips I would want to give you in general about this is just stop thinking of it as a camera. You know, I know it's like we're going to have a little technological device and we're going to press record on it and it's a camera, but really, ideally, we should be thinking of it as an avatar for the viewer's head, right? So don't do to this camera anything you wouldn't do to an audience member's head. By which I mean, you wouldn't grab an audience member by the head and turn their head for them, right? That would be unpleasant for the viewer. And so we shouldn't turn this camera, right? We wouldn't pick a viewer up and shake them. We wouldn't force them up or down to look at something. So a lot of the instincts that, it's funny, I think both amateur folks with cameras and very, very professional level folks with cameras, their instinct is like, I want to move this camera. It's going to be cool to move it all around, you know, to run around with it or to bring it up or down or take it on a little journey. But the point of VR video is that we give that agency over to the viewer. They're the one who gets to look around wherever they want with their head. They turn their head in a headset and they get to see wherever they want to see. So if the camera is also turning, now you've created a sort of amusement park ride where people are likely to lose their lunch. So we try not to move VR cameras if we can help it. If we must move them, we do it as smoothly as possible. Inside a vehicle, let's say, is a good way of implying that, you know, your body should expect to be moved. Because ultimately you can kind of create a sensation of seasickness if your senses are telling you you're moving, but your body is like, I'm not moving. So we try not to shake the VR camera or move it if we don't have to. And the way we accomplish that is with either a tripod or, I have to say, this is going to sound silly coming from a quote unquote professional filmmaker or whatever, but selfie sticks are great for VR cameras because VR cameras are very small and they see even the tripod that's beneath them. So the smaller the tripod, the less it is in the way. So selfie sticks can be great for this kind of work. Okay, so that's sort of my like general, if you're gonna wade into this world, like don't, you know, these are the pitfalls in general. So before I get into the specifics of showing you an actual particular camera and trying to give you a sense of what it would be like to walk through shooting something with it and then editing it and delivering it to YouTube, what questions do we have in the virtual room?
Don't see any questions in the chat right now.
Cool. All right, so check it out. I will stop sharing for just a moment so that I can show you. We have at Towson a smattering of different 360 cameras. And when I say we, Student Computing Services has a few different models available. Generally, they operate out of the Cook Library, though now during quarantine, I'm not honestly sure if that's still the case. Might be still the case. But anyway, one device that I happen to have here just to show you, and they also have, is the Ricoh Theta V. I liked this camera a lot like 2 years ago. The problem with these things is that they're always improving, you know, so when institutions buy a fleet of them or whatever, they are relatively inexpensive, but they do, you know, get beaten fast by the next coolest model. But there are some cool things. I just don't have them on hand here, but SCS also has, they have the Ricoh Theta, they have the GoPro Fusion, the 360 Fly, which I have not used, and then the Samsung Gear 360. All of these are totally functional. And while they'll each have a different app that you would use on your phone, they're all gonna, in general, mimic the workflow that I'm gonna follow today. So, you know, the exact screen I will show you will look a little different, but the general process of what you would do is gonna be very similar on all of these products. The one that I happen to like best right now, I have to say, we don't have it in SCS. We do have it in my department because I was the one that wrote the purchase order. But they're not that expensive. And so if you were really going to get into this for your own scholarship and you're traveling with it and everything, like, it's $400, which I know is not nothing. But then again, it's like, in the world of cameras, that's pretty doable. Or at least in the world of cameras, you don't get that much cheaper. Let's put it that way. But the Views XR, which I have right here, is cool because of this. So what this does is, there's two lenses on this camera. One, two. They're both fisheye lenses. And when they're configured back to back like this, it makes a 360 image. But when you press this button, they flip out like that. And now it becomes a, ooh, I just lost my camera. All right, I think I'm on my way back. There we go. Now it becomes a 180 camera in 3D. That is to say, it's stereoscopic like our eyeballs. That's why it flipped out in that way. So why I think that's cool is the 360 cameras in general, until you get enormously expensive, are all two-dimensional. It's like being put inside a globe, with like the image wallpapered on the inside of a sphere. Whereas these stereoscopic ones, you know, a 180 would sort of stop right here, where your, you know, where your vision stops as you're looking forward. But so long as you don't look over your shoulder, it appears to be immersive, but it's also 3D, which is cool for some, like that lion one that I showed at the beginning. That would be awesome shown in 3D. I think that kind of thing would be, so you would want to think about your image and why you would choose one or the other. So let me get back to sharing, and I'll show you in a little bit closer up what the features of this particular camera are. They're not paying me or anything. I should probably get a commission from Views. I just happen to like this camera best right now on the market. So this is what it looks like on screen left. You're seeing the configuration in 360. Screen right is 180. If I close in on it, these are the controls. I'm showing you this so I can, my effort here is to sort of prove to you that this is within the realm of point and shoot, okay? So there are controls directly on the camera. As you can see here, the record is the button on the front. There are a couple of buttons all in a line here. It's sort of hard to see because the whole camera is dark black, but believe me when I say there's 3 buttons here. One of them switches from 360 to 180. One of them turns on Wi-Fi, which we'll need to connect to the camera with our phone so we can edit the stuff we're shooting. And one of them turns the camera on, power. The only other thing on the camera is this little segment that you flip open, and that has the micro SD card that stores all of the stuff we're going to shoot, and the USB-C port, which connects to either a charger to charge the thing up, or connects to a computer if we want to take files directly off the camera and onto our computer. Okay? So theoretically, it's easy enough to just press record on the thing and you've shot video. Now, I'm going to tell you more about what we need to do to shoot, you know, what we want to shoot, but it is essentially a point and shoot camera. Also, incidentally, I'm a video person, but this can shoot stills as well. So if it were useful to you to just have like a still 360 documentation of something, you know, it does that. Okay, so a couple of tips from experience for working with this camera in particular, but honestly, I think this is going to be applicable to a lot of the consumer level 360 cameras. Battery life gets eaten up really fast on these. So if you were going out in the field, you know, if you're I don't know, an anthropologist or an archaeologist or something, and you're bringing this out, I hope you have a battery pack or a generator or something. You have access to one of those things that turns your car lighter into an AC adapter, you know, because you're going to need to charge these cameras often, and they don't have swappable batteries. There is a process by which you connect your phone to this camera through Wi-Fi, which I'll show you in just a second. That's to change settings and to also to get the files and edit them. The downside is that the Wi-Fi does drop at a pretty close distance. Like you walk around with your phone away from where the camera is shooting, you probably dropped Wi-Fi. So my advice is you're going to set up your settings one time and then stop using your phone. Just pocket it and hit the record button on the camera, and don't even deal with connecting to the phone until you're done and ready to edit. It'll just work easier that way. I happen to have, I know here I am like the emerging tech, blah, 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 but I am still rolling on an iPhone 7. So older than iPhone 7S or whatever the one right after mine is, you can't edit on your phone if you shoot in the highest resolution this camera can use. But if you have anything newer, like an 8 or whatever, or an Android equivalent, you're good. But it so happens on my phone, I can only shoot in 4K, and this camera can go all the way up to 5.7. Anybody in here who knows anything about TVs or whatever, you might think, wow, that already sounds like really high resolution. What's the problem? But just so you know, the problem is we're stretching that resolution all the way around us in every direction. So it's not just a rectangle TV in front of our face. It's like trying to stretch that TV all the way around us, right? Like a globe. So actually the resolution needs to be quite high to look good. Okay, I swear I'm getting through this chart soon. Here's a really dumb one. You know that little tiny card I showed you back here, the micro SD card? You can lose this card in the camera. There's like a slot, right? If you could, I think you can see my mouse, right? Like around here, you can actually like miss and, and lose the card. And we have done that in our department. So one of these cameras that EMF owns shakes, and it's got a micro SD card inside there. Still works, but with a different card. So anyway, just don't take that card out. When it's full, transfer your files and delete them. Don't ever take it out, because you're just gonna, one day it's gonna happen to you. Design flaw, you know. Last thing about any of these cameras, look, it's a miracle they even work, right? It's like a tiny little thing the size of your phone, and it shoots virtual reality. It's not also a particularly good mic. So my advice for those of us who are trying to do this with as little gear and maybe as little professional media making know-how as possible, just don't even deal with sound yet. Just shoot your picture, and we'll add like music and or voiceover later. And I'll show you how you can do it on your phone. But I would just avoid trying to like have an interview with someone and have them talk and think it's going to sound particularly good, especially if there's any noise in the area that you're shooting in. It's probably not going to work. So I would use this as a way to get beautiful, amazing, immersive images, and then we'll think about what we do with our soundtrack as a secondary issue, okay? All right, so if I were gonna use this Views camera to sort of walk you through, like, here's how we're gonna get an image out of this thing. You set it up sort of like it's a Wi-Fi router, oddly enough. If you haven't used any other camera that works this way, this is common now. It's like a solution a lot of small devices are using. Basically, you go into your phone settings wherever you would choose a Wi-Fi network. Like if you're if you're at a restaurant or your friend's house or a hotel or something, you have to choose a new Wi-Fi network. You do that. So in an iPhone, you go under settings and then Wi-Fi. And you will find that there is a Wi-Fi signal being broadcast from this camera named Views XR, then with a big long serial number after it. And you connect to that. Then on your phone, you've hopefully got the app for Views. I'm sort of speaking off the cuff here, but on the slide you see we would have wanted to download that beforehand because we just got ourselves off Wi-Fi, by switching to the camera. But so you've got the Views XR Human Eyes, which is a fun pun, and that's their phone app. So you got that on your phone. You connect by Wi-Fi to this camera. It's got a default password, which is 1234567 You type that in, and you're good. You're connected to the camera now. And then you would open the Views app on your phone, and it looks like this. On the left, that's just the splash screen to fill up some space. But on the right, that's what it looks like directly on my phone. If you click on the camera part, it allows you to change the settings and see what your camera is about to shoot. The gallery part is where you look at stuff you've already shot. So right now, we're going to simulate. I've clicked on camera. And these are two views of what it looks like. This is me in my backyard. You can see I'm literally controlling it from the phone right at that moment. And if I were to put my finger on it and swipe around this image, I would be able to pan all the way around my backyard, see everything the camera can see. If you click on, let me pull up a pen here. You see this gear on the right side of the interface? If you click that, then this comes out. This wheel here on the right is all the camera settings that could be useful before you shoot. So remember a few minutes ago when I said, let's set this all up once and then never touch it again on our shoot so we don't have to keep connecting with our phone? This is what I was talking about. Let's set this up once. So basically, the only real decision that I think you're going to make here is what resolution are you shooting in? And that's this, video resolution. I think you should be shooting in the highest possible video resolution because it's going to look better. If you disagree with me, then you already know enough to have an opinion, so then you're good. but otherwise, choose 5.7K, which is the highest this camera can shoot. So the other things, exposure, ISO, shutter speed, these are things that could be helpful in low or high light situations. But if you don't know a lot about cameras, you don't have to touch this. These cameras make automatic adjustments that should, in most cases, be good. In general, high lighting is better than low lighting for these cameras. Outside is better than inside for these cameras, but they'll be able to do it so long as you're not trying to shoot in the dark. Okay, now this is about to be a video that I screen captured from me actually editing on my phone. Okay, so back here, we were setting up the shoot, and then this big red button down here, that's record. You can either record from the phone, or if you think Wi-Fi is going to drop, you can just press the record button, which is like the big button on the front of the camera, and then do your thing. If you're supposed to be in the shot, then cool, be in the shot. But if not, run, because it sees everything, right? You like VR directors very often end up like hiding behind benches or like laying down on their bellies underneath things because there's nowhere to hide, when you're shooting VR stuff. But if we're doing documentation of scholarship, if you're in a lab or you're in the field and you're trying to show us something, I think it's perfectly reasonable for you and any other, people or animals or things that would be in that place to be in that shot. So we're gonna hit record. Once we're done, we hit the, stop recording either on our phone or on the camera. And now we've got a video. So let me show you what the process will be then to edit right on your phone. So you don't have to even go onto a computer or really know anything about video editing software at all. Here we go. So this is the Views app on an iPhone. I can just click and drag around on it to scroll all the way around the 360 image. And then in the top right, if I hit edit, I get choices that will allow me to edit this video. I'm going to do director's cut. This is where you find the main things like setting start and setting end to trim out the moments where you weren't quite ready. So to set the start, you click set start and choose where the beginning is. I'm just going to make sure I'm looking at the camera. Then set end, and you do the same thing. You move the timeline to pick where the end is. You hit the check mark, and then you can hit the back arrow to go back to the other things. Now there are of course effects and filters, adjustments to change brightness and contrast, things like that. But the one other thing I want to point out to you is the audio section. You can actually record a voiceover or load music here and change levels. That's really useful so you don't have to worry about doing any audio on location. When you're all done editing, you click finish in the top right, and then it's going to tell me to render. I hit continue and render and give it a little time to complete. And when it's done, it's going to ask me how I want to share this. I can either save this directly to my phone in its camera roll or click share. I'm going to click share, and then it'll give me a bunch of options of where I can share it to. I could mail it to myself or drop it on Google Drive, but if I have a Mac and an iPhone, I can also AirDrop it directly to that computer. Once I get the file to my computer, I can log into my YouTube account, click upload video, and then drag this video file directly to the upload video window. I give it a name, type in a description, and click next. Once uploaded, you can watch 360 videos directly in a web browser on YouTube and click and drag around the full 360 experience, or you can use it in an app on a phone where you can move the phone around, or even drop the phone in a VR headset to have a full immersive experience. All right. So I know that's quick. I'm trying to thread the needle between being boringly technical and being too fast to follow. But we're recording this. So if you really want to follow along and you think like, oh, views is the one I want to use, you can always come back and watch this step by step. But even if you were going to use GoPro or Ricoh or any of the competitors, I've used 3 out of the 4 of those that I listed earlier, and they all have an app like this that does more or less this. You know, the interface looks a little different each time, but you know, in the views one, we went to the gallery and we hit edit. I chose director's cut. I did set start and end to trim out the parts where I was up touching the camera and didn't mean to have the viewer see that part. I also mentioned, again, to avoid the mic sounding bad, you can click audio and do all this stuff later. You know, so you'd still be recording maybe through your phone microphone, but at least you could do it in, you know, the privacy of your bathroom or something where you can control how much noise there is going on in the outside world, you know. So maybe you record a voiceover, you add a song that you have on your phone or something like that. And then you've authored a video that you can put directly on YouTube, again, by doing finish, rendering, and then sharing. I don't have access to an Android phone, or I could mock that up for you too, but it's going to be very similar. You know, this last window here will look different to an Android user, but on the flip side, an Android user, it'd probably be easier just to plug the phone directly into a computer and move the file, because Android treats phones a little bit more like a stick drive than Apple does. So that's in general the process that you would go through. There is an app on your computer if you're a little more of the mindset where like you're like, actually I don't need to do this all on my mobile phone. Like I'm willing to copy a file over to my computer, and do I gain anything by, you know, having access to my mouse and keyboard and all the rest of that? And the answer is yes. Views has a software called Views Studio that allows you to import, trim, add effects, and render out, just like we did on the phone, The effects all over here on the side, it's many of the same things you have access to on the phone, plus a couple that you don't. That can be useful if you want to make adjustments to the image after the fact. But in general, you would do a very similar process. The interface looks a little different. Trimming is, I know this is small, but down here in the VCR controls, these two on the left that look like left and right brackets, that's the beginning and the end. So you could like drag through your video, set the left bracket, and that's the beginning of your video, cutting off everything before that, and then, you know, do the same with the right bracket on the end. And then when you're done, you just click render and it does the same thing. It dumps out an MP4 file that can be dragged directly to a YouTube upload window. So I know that if you've never uploaded video to YouTube before, if you don't use your camera much, you know, maybe this all feels like a lot. But with a little bit of practice, we really are just talking about like, okay, connect to an app, hit record on a camera, decide where in the video the beginning and end is, and then output a file, which you would then drag into a web browser and be able to upload. Now, we're not putting many files together. We're not creating like an edited masterpiece of we're not making The Godfather here, you know, but we have documentation of one shot that is fully in the round 360 VR. And we can add layered audio onto it, all from the field, all from your, you know, smartphone, which I think is pretty powerful. And I think it sort of lands somewhere in between tech averse and tech guru. You know, it's like, it'll make you look pretty slick if you can get your head around this process, but it won't actually require you to become a filmmaker proper yet, you know? So that's sort of my quick tour through the process. So I think I want to stop there and just ask, you know, what questions do people have, and what can I do for you to help you feel more able to do something like this?